For at least the part of the morning.
Part of the morning while we're doing a demonstration. So I invited this nice young man to come in.
And who is he?
And who is he?
Can you give us the graph of how he...
His neurological levels of introduction.
Oh. I introduced myself across the neurological levels, who I was as an NLP trainer. But since you all, almost all know him.
Everybody knows me.
Everybody knows of you. What we're going to do today is, if we come over here to our flip chart, excuse me, sir, you're standing in front of me. We always used to sit in the middle of us, didn't we?
We do,
Yeah.
yes.
We're going to do SCORE, the SCORE model. We'll do a demonstration of how we use that powerful process for gathering information. We will stop occasionally and ask questions about things that Tim and I are observing and see if you're observing the same things.
So our goal is to see if you have the same kind of intuitions, or at least you get an idea of what our intuitions are. As we do it, there's no right answer though, because you could always be paying attention to all kinds of different things and still be doing a good job of being successful. So we call this a demo with questions. So we're going to do like a complete piece of work as though somebody were walking into the office, so to speak.
Because people often say, where do I start? Well, the SCORE helps you know where to start, always. Whether you're doing a coaching session, a counseling session, where you're working in business and something's not going right, no matter what the context is, the SCORE can help you know where to start. So that's what we'll be doing this morning for part of the morning, and then you will have the opportunity to do a complete SCORE with each other without knowing what technique are we applying, or what's the where do we think we'll go with this. You have no idea until you start gathering information. And then with what time we have left, we'll come back up here. We'll be doing some things with communicating with symptoms and whatever else we have time for this afternoon. Okay, so that's the roadmap for today. And Tim actually requested the song we're going to sing. He said, "You mean you haven't sung Every Little Cell yet?"
Because it's the health song.
That's right. Yeah. This is the first one you did?
Well, this came from one of our students in one of the first health certification trainings, and we changed the words slightly, but it isn't an original song for me.
Oh.
It's one that's one of our students brought to us on a tape. So, are there some people in here who have never heard this song? Oh, great. So, the tune is really simple, and I'm sure you'll get it as we go along. There's a whole bunch of you have already heard it, right? So, let's all just stand. Every little cell in my body is happy. Every little cell in my body is well. Every little cell in my body is happy. Every little cell in my body is well. I can tell every little cell in my body is happy and well. I can tell every little cell in my body is happy and well. Once more. Every little cell in my body is happy. Every little cell in my body is well. Every little cell in my body is happy. Every little cell in my body is well. I can tell every little cell in my body is happy and well. I can tell every little cell in my body is happy and well. Okay.
So I found this to be a really nice thing you could do while training at the prison.
Now you're going to hear his
Every little body
version.
by cells is happy. Review the score. Now the score is something that gives you kind of a shape to work from. I remember Virginia Satir always used to say, people would ask her how she'd do things, and Virginia would say, trust your guts. And so a lot of her students just trusted their guts, but they didn't have hers. So they didn't necessarily produce the same kind of results. And
So in other words, they wouldn't have the same intuitions that Virginia Satir was having.
So-
And the SCORE model is one that came from Robert. He
Again-
loves to make up these kinds of things.
the word score isn't the order that we do it in, but it's the way of remembering all the pieces to it.
Right.
With NLP, of course, we're always working with present state and desired state.
So that's what these circles represent. It's like, this is where the person is now, this is where they want to go.
So we're always contrasting these two things. You don't have a problem until there's a gap between these two things. If your present state's what you want, there's nothing to do. If there's a gap, then it's telling you what direction to move in.
And so we've always operated off of, well, let's contrast this and decide what to do to fill any gap that exists between them. And we usually say we add in resources to do that.
So a little formula for thinking in NLP is present state plus appropriate resources is equals desired state. If you think about the present state, there's actually two parts to it. And I know we're reviewing because Robert covered a bit of this last time, and I went over it a bit as well. But
Just to make
there's
sure.
the symptom,
That's-
whatever's the issue that you've got now.
Right now,
The-
present moment.
That you're identifying as the issue you want to work with. And then there's whatever led up to it, the cause.
And often the cause is further in the past. Not always, but 99% of the time. What's causing what's going on now is something that happened to you that is unresolved.
Now, cause is a little bit of a tricky word because in a real sense we're not really looking at a linear cause-effect kind of idea. So I think when you're working with NLP, you want to think more in terms of relationships. How is this in relationship to that? You can change the relationships. We can't change a linear cause. So it's more of to say what led up to this or what
Yes.
things happened.
Yeah,
And the cause wouldn't have to always be in the past.
that's what I'm saying. Most of the time it is, but sometimes it's about the way you're thinking of the future.
One of the shamans that we modeled said that, how do you know that your past is what led you to be who you are now? Maybe your future call is calling you.
Yeah.
You know?
And the shamans we've worked with believe that time is circular anyway, that it's not linear, it doesn't fly like an arrow.
So he would say, how do you know you're not at this seminar? Because you're going to meet somebody at this seminar who is going to be really important in your life, and you'll live happily ever after or something. And it had nothing to do with whatever you did that got you here in the past. It's your future calling.
Yeah.
Loreto.
When you're talking about your past, that can be also generational.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, it could be transgenerational.
From the family system, yes.
Part of the family mind.
Karma, they call it sometimes, yes.
So then you've got desired state, and that would be, there's the outcome, what is it you want?
Specific.
Outcomes are quantifiable. We can measure whether or not we've got them.
And we have evidence that we've got them.
So the outcome's more quantifiable. How do you know, if you were going to save $10,000, how would you know if you did it? You'd have $10,000. Now, we also want to find the effect of the outcome. In other words, it's what you really want. It's the motivator for going after it. And that would be the effect of the outcome.
We also call this meta outcomes, if you recall. It's the outcome of the outcome.
So if your outcome's to have $10,000, that's not what you really want. What you really want is whatever the $10,000 gets for you. $10,000 could be a burden if you had to just hold on to it for your whole life.
Or if it was buried under your mattress and you couldn't get, or your house and you couldn't get to it. If it was all in pennies, oh yeah, that would be a burden, right? Yeah, yeah. So, and until we have gathered this information that is here as to what's going on presently, what might be causing it, what you want instead, and what that will get for you, we have no idea what the appropriate way is to add in resources. So this is our roadmap. This helps us know, where do we start? I remember once when we had a master social worker in one of our classes, and when we introduced the S.C.O.R.E as a way of gathering information, starting with a client, she said, they never taught me anything like that in school. I mean, I've been doing social work for 10 years, and I was always nervous about where to start with somebody. This gives me the answer. When a patient or a client comes in the door, I know where to start. I start gathering information using the S.C.O.R.E.
There's also a way of modeling what's going on with somebody. So we want to be able to model what's their problem, so to speak. We want to begin to model what's the solution. So you're really doing modeling every time you're doing this. Now, if you recall back the first weekend, I talked about every one of these has certain vital signs. And they're things that as NLPers we pay attention to. It's like, again, if you go to the doctor and the doctor, you go in there and you sit on whatever those things are called.
Those tables
Those cold tables.
filled with,
Then the doctor checks your vital signs, right? And what does the doctor check for? Blood pressure. What's in your throat, does all that stuff.
pulse, temperature.
We just have a different set of vital signs to look at.
What do we pay attention to in NLP?
What do you want to be observing?
Huh? Everything like,
And what Olga's saying is really important because it's everything, but if we don't have a way to put it in a structure, it's overwhelming.
yes.
So this S.C.O.R.E is not a technique, it's just a way of putting your information together.
It's a model.
It's more of a model. It's not something you think of as a technique. I wouldn't do a S.C.O.R.E model as a technique because you can do any technique or combination of techniques inside of it.
Yeah. So we do pay attention to everything. And so if you think back to what you've learned from practitioner on about how people think and behave, we've learned a lot of different things that you can pay attention to.
So,
And we'll pay attention to all of those as we go along. The physiology,
which would include the breathing, the muscle tension, the color, the posture, the gestures.
all of that.
So we'll want to watch for things like asymmetries or gestures that might have meaning. People will, if you think back to your master practitioner days, remember that some modalities, people often say, I've got this problem, and they're gesturing to a particular place. And you can guess where they're having the problem. It's out here somewhere.
You know where it's located.
So submodalities. So if somebody says, I've got this fuzzy idea, they're already telling you something. In addition to submodalities, we're paying attention to modalities.
Sensory systems.
Is this visual or auditory or kinesthetic, or is something missing? Remember, as a rule of thumb, the problem that somebody has will be in the least conscious represented system.
Okay. What about language things we listen for?
Meta programs, language.
Meta programs.
Meta programs, are they moving towards something, away from something, or are they procedural?
Organ language.
Organ language? So, excellent. What else?
Eye
cues.
accessing.
Yeah, exactly. We want to notice what are they doing with their eye accessing cues.
What's the major language thing you listen for that you learned way back? Meta model.
And what you want to pay attention to are any meta-model patterns that kind of jump out at you.
Jump out, yeah.
If I say, everybody always rejects me, I mean, that's absolutes, right? And if you're paying attention to that, it'll give you an idea of what you might do.
What you call metamodal, is that, do you include the beliefs that you hear?
Well, okay, now you're getting into a whole different category. You listen for beliefs.
Beliefs and to make that a bigger category,
And
the neurological
neurological
levels. So if somebody's coming in and they say, I had a nurse that I worked with, and she came in one day and was kind of panicky because she had worked on a psychiatric ward with a lot of really depressed patients, and she'd forgotten to lock up the medicine cabinet one night when she left her shift. which can be really dangerous for people. Now, that's, if you think, what neurological level is that on? That's just a behavior. She just had to remember to do it. So we did basically a new behavior generator and a couple of other things, and she said she never had the problem again. So you want to, everything that we do doesn't have to be at these really core, deep levels of belief. Sometimes the big pieces of work you do can even be behavioral.
You're also paying attention to perceptual positions. Are they stuck in somebody else's position?
And how do we pay attention to those? By what they say? What else? How else? What if somebody's talking like this? Their physiology would tell you what perceptual position. That'd be kind of disassociated, right?
You know, I wasn't looking at him, but I heard his voice go, this, you know.
So we're going to be paying attention in a lot of ways to what the perceptual position is. And often the person will not be conscious of it. It's interesting. We were, Taryn and I were working on a modeling project with these students, these brilliant high school students, or basically straight A students. And one of the kids kept doing something where he'd talk about it and they'd go like this for a second. So I made him stop and find out what he was doing. And he suddenly realized that what he would do, this person didn't know NLP, but what he said is, oh, I'm stepping back and looking at the whole class. And then he'd step into the teacher and get a sense of what the teacher was thinking and doing. Then he'd step back and he'd kind of program it in for himself. So it was like he was doing these new behavior generators over and over again. So often we'll do these things naturally, but of course he wasn't conscious that he was doing that.
Yeah.
So we want to be paying attention to things because it may not come out. The person may not be aware they're doing it. Most times when you're working with people, they're not going to come and say, oh, I disassociate occasionally when I'm in this context. I really need to stay in my body. But you can sense when they're not there, right? Okay.
So
So we're going to be paying attention to these.
all of these things. And which ones are relevant? The ones that are relevant are the ones that repeat over and over again that show you a pattern. Not just that it happens once, but it's repeating. So it's the patterns of all of those that we are concerned about. If you see it more than once, you hear it more than once.
So you might think of this as neuro-linguistic patterning, which probably would have been a better name for this field.
This field.
Because we're really finding what's a pattern that's there. Okay. Now, one of the things that makes the SCORE model especially useful is if you move around with it. It's a lot harder to work just sitting in a chair the whole time.
And you've already done the dancing SCORE, which was, you didn't gather a lot of information. You just moved through the spaces. What we found is if we spatially anchor the cause, symptom, outcome, and effect, then you can constantly be bringing somebody back in to see if what pattern repeats each time you come back into the space.
And if they're getting anchored, guess who else is getting anchored? You are, as the guide, you're getting anchored, so it helps you remember what's going on and what those states are.
So we would love to do a demonstration for you.
And you might notice up here, we put these markers up here. Can
So
see
you can
those?
tell where we are.
I don't know if Jason can see them, but over there. So you'll know where we are. So that's, C will be for cause, will symptom, outcome, and effect.
And Maura said, there's no R. Well, we don't know where the resources come from or where we add them. Oftentimes, we add them back in the cause.
Or they can be put in the
They
middle
can be
here.
put anywhere.
Sometimes it's between here. So remember if you say present state plus resources equals desired state. So a lot of times people will put the R there. I like to do it in the cause though often because then you're creating a whole new cause. So often it can be better that way.
We need to get him wired. It's up here?
Looks like he's already wired.
Oh,
Here it is.
it's back there. Behind the chrysanthemum. Oh, we have to turn it on? Now,
Put it higher.
I'd like to set
Actually,
intent
if you
for
could
all
pinch
of
your shirt,
you
it'd be ideal.
to have you hold the space for Jason to get what it is he wants. So that, I mean, that really helps. That creates a huge envelope here for us. Creates a field where healing can occur.
So first thing we want to do, and even if you do, like Kat's saying, even if somebody knows about NLP, I still think it's really helpful to give them a procedure. So if we say, so we're going to put down these floor cards.
And we need to change positions because I'm going to be over here doing this. We're going to, these are wonderful spatial anchors donated by Nicole for us to use up here. And we're going to establish a space for symptom and cause, and different spaces for outcome and effect. And so as we start, how, in terms of laying time out so that the group can see you, Jason, what does it feel like? Which direction is the past for you?
I think the past is this way and the future is
all
that
right.
way.
So,
It better be after we pasted those on.
otherwise we'll have to move them, okay?
Or change, yeah.
So I'll lay them down in approximately the same place that they are taped up on the wall here to begin with, so that you know where he is
Okay.
at any point in time. And when we say step into, you can either step directly on, these are laminated so you won't hurt them, directly on them, or you can step right in front of them, whichever feels most natural for you.
Although sometimes if you step in front, it's best, because
They-
otherwise they get kicked around and then kind of lose space and stuff.
So over here, Jason,
I'm so
we'll,
psyched.
huh?
I'm so excited. Wagging my tail. Yeah.
Over here we have a meta position where we can be out of any of the working experience to get started. So typically what I would do, and I don't know if Tim still does it this way too, is just ask for a little brief summary of what brought
deal
you.
is?
Yeah,
Yeah.
to pretend you walked through the door today.
Okay.
What
You have
brought
to let
you
me know
here?
if this is too chunky, but
Too chunky.
since I was 12, I've had this condition with my right arm where, and that's why I'm typing, where I had to learn to be left-handed and everything, because it goes into this, anything in this range, it shakes. It's got a name. It's called dystonia, which just means that's what it does. But and it's been an issue that's affected my identity. It's affected. I had to carry a little typewriter around before laptops in school and do all this stuff in order to compensate for this and become left-handed and all that. And but it's something that I'd love to get more information about and see. And I'd be happy if symptoms changed, but more than that, I'd be, I've adapted, but I'd also be happy just to find out more.
You said you were born with this?
No, but
You're 12,
it was
you
12, 13 is when it kind of came on.
Okay. Is that the typical course for this, or do you know?
Don't know. It's different for different people, and it's pretty rare, apparently, but yeah.
So you actually have the identity of having something quite unique.
That's a nice way to put it, yeah.
But a little shaky.
One side and the other. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, on the shaky side.
So if it's your hands down, it's fine?
Yeah, and with anxiety, it's a little more intense. But anything in this range, actually.
If you just lift it now, would it
In
shake?
this range,
Yeah.
meaning?
In this range with my right hand, it'll either do this or that. And I don't think you want to be there for that. It'll literally go out like this. It shakes. That's like literally what
You have
it
to
does.
hold it down a lot.
Or just, let it go, or
But
it'll go into flexion.
Are there
and then
times when it doesn't do that?
major muscle movements, like if I were rowing or throwing a ball or something like that, but minor muscle movements like typing or
But driving
writing,
a car?
I do it mostly left-handed. So I can, but if there's anxiety-provoked thing, the whole arm goes into flexion.
And
then I have
it does it by itself, it seems. You said,
it's
you
out of
said-
control, where most people will have the muscles counteracting each other to the appropriate degree for an activity. The whole arm goes into flexion from subscapular all the way down to the wrist.
So
So we
this
have a
is a
general
physical
idea.
symptom. that's been with Jason since he was 12 years old, that you were aware of. You weren't aware of it before then.
No, I was able to write and do other stuff, yeah.
Uh-huh. And it's really shaped your whole life.
Yeah, and it's been very embarrassing at times. I've had really embarrassing experiences. If you imagine your arm going into full flexion for random reasons when you're trying to drink something or whatever.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's just, at this moment, bring this over here and be thinking about what it's been like for you the entire time since you were 12 years old. With this, it's the right arm that seems to do its own thing. And it's shaky. And it's impacted your identity. It's been embarrassing at times. And you've learned how to compensate for it. So we're going to leave all of that right here to begin with. Okay? And step back out of that. And
Wag my tail.
shake it purposely. Okay, so that was most of what he told us about, right? Back here in meta belongs over there in the symptom. It's what's happening now as well as what's been happening in the past.
So could you step back into that space just for a second? You said you compensate for this.
Yeah.
So how does it affect your life? And there's the physical part of it, but what?
How's it a problem?
Now?
Yeah.
Now, not as much. I just have to explain to people why I do things the way I do, one-handed or left-handed, or I do acupuncture. I have to do it all left-handed. But now I feel like I've found ways that outwardly compensate for it. But there are just a lot of things that I just can't do in this range. I still feel like I'm dominant right-handed, but I feel like there's a big gap here.
Okay.
You feel like there's a big gap there.
There's things you can't do.
Yeah.
So
I can't write.
So how do you think about the big gap?
How do I think about it?
What's that right there? It says there's a big gap there.
Right.
Yeah, it's this big dark space that goes out,
Okay.
no offense, right out in this area.
Okay.
Here.
Okay, before we explore that any further, though, let's find out what he really wants concerning this. So what we know we have is this big gap. He's learned to compensate. He does everything with the left hand and has to do a lot of explanation for people.
Yeah.
Okay? So we know partially what the issue is here. But let's find out what he wants instead. Because I would assume he might want to have full range of movement, but that may not be exactly what his outcome is. So